When governments communicate with their people, which they would prefer not to do, but must do from time to time, they often do it by using metaphors. These are also called sound bites, a little nibble of noise which is easier to understand than the actual factual situation it is being used to describe. The current metaphor dominating the political discussion is the fiscal cliff. A few months ago, there was no fiscal cliff. A few months from now, impossible as it seems at the moment, there will be no more mention of the fiscal cliff. But right now, all you can hear is the fiscal cliff. The government could go into details, could tell the people about the enormous debt the country owes, with no hope of repayment, with no realistic way of meeting the payments due on the debt, which will only add to the debt, on and on, in numbers that are so large they are not comprehensible. So instead of going into all of this, as well as much, much more that is involved, the government says that we are facing a fiscal cliff. All that other stuff is too complicated for us to understand, too boring to expound upon, and too shocking to consider, but we can picture a fiscal cliff. I live in a city that is working on its budget for the coming year, and the way they figure it, after totaling up assets and liabilities, projected income and bills, there is a deficit of $34 million. They're trying to come up with ways to pay that off, to balance the budget, and they're calling it a hole in the budget. They're trying to fill that hole. Now, they could have looked at that $34 million and said, this is our very own fiscal cliff. But if they had, then the federal government would have stepped in and said, no, you can't do that. We have the fiscal cliff. That's ours. You've got to come up with something else, something of your own. The city was aware of this, and so, while the nation faces the cliff, we have a hole. There is a sense of proportion to all of this. Well, while my city tries to fill its hole, why don't we take a look at the cliff? We can go at it from the bottom and look up, literally face the cliff. But no, that's not the way we're supposed to approach it. Instead, we're at the top, and if we are brave enough, we can go out to the edge and look down. Whoa, it's very scary. We're so high, you really can't see the bottom, but we know it's there. If we went over that cliff, if we jumped off, we'd be like Wile E. Coyote, going down with that high-pitched whistling sound until, whoomp, far, far away, we'd hit bottom, maybe create a little cartoon cloud of dust. The other image we get from the cliff is the one of the lemmings. That's us, all rushing to our death over the fiscal cliff. And that's what we'd be doing if the government wasn't keeping us from going over that cliff. Even though they're doing nothing, except disagreeing and living very well at our expense, the government is the only thing that is keeping us from plunging over the fiscal cliff to our certain doom. The fiscal cliff is only one of many metaphors the government uses to communicate with us lemmings. There is the good old ship of state. It could have been a rowboat or a canoe, but ship of state sounds better. It rides the waves of circumstance with a certain majesty. Bailout is another metaphor. When one boat springs a leak, when other boats sprang leaks, the great ship of state bailed them out. No one else could have done that. The fact that those bailouts have led us, in large part, to our fiscal cliff is something the government doesn't want to discuss. What's done is done. Forget the bailouts. Let's talk about the fiscal cliff. Here are a few other prized metaphors. The domino theory, the chain reaction, the Iron Curtain, and the Cold War. There are leaky dikes and rotten apples. There's even been a silk stocking with a run in it. Right now, though, we are all focused on the fiscal cliff. I don't know what the next crisis will be, but I'm sure the government will dust off a bright new metaphor so we lemmings will be able to comprehend it.